Allah keeps the entire universe and the systems in it under His simultaneous control. Almighty Allah created the universe from a single point with a huge explosion. While all other explosions damaged the existing order, the 300 billion galaxies in the universe emerged from zero volume, nothing in other words, with this explosion known as the Big Bang. The Milky Way we live in is just one of these 300 billion galaxies. There are 250 billion stars in the Milky Way. The Sun is one of these 250 billion stars. The number of stars such as the Sun in the visible universe is 10 to the power of 24. A stupendous number, more than a billion times a billion times a billion. Allah has created the earth as a living space within boundless universe. We live on a world that occupies almost no place at all within infinity. In fact, not just our earth but even our galaxy occupies a tiny place in the universe. So just imagine how small a place you yourself occupy in this utterly vast universe. Every single atom in each of these 10 to the power of 24 stars is under the control of Allah at every moment. Every movement, speed of revolution, the temperatures and distances of and between every planet, every one of the 10 to the power of 24 stars and 300 billion galaxies are all determined in the sight of Allah and are duly created at every moment. Allah maintains countless balances on earth at every second, without our ever being aware of them. While a flawless equilibrium is being maintained in the vastness of space, an extraordinary range of extraordinarily complex and perfect processes also takes place within a few seconds, in every square millimeters of our bodies. For example, every second as you watch this film, about 100 billion processes have taken place in your eyes within a second. 50 million cells in your body have died every second. 50 million new cells have been created every second to replace those that die. 10 million bits of information has been sent from your eyes to your brain every second. 10 million energy molecules, ATP, have been produced in all your 100 trillion cells every single second. In addition, these processes have taken place every single second, not just in your own body, but in the bodies of all the 7 billion people living on Earth at this moment. Because each of the 100 trillion cells in the bodies of all these 7 billion people is under the control of Allah at every moment. Are you at all aware of these events taking place inside and around you at every single moment? The balances maintained at every moment are not only limited to space and the human body. At the same time, quadrillions of plants from more than 500,000 species all make photosynthesis, and oxygen levels are thus arranged in such a way that organisms can remain alive within the last second that just passed by. 2 million species of animals and plants on the land, under the ground and in the depths of the seas continue their lives to their perfect systems. 100 billion birds from 10,000 species and trillions of fish from 40,000 species have spent that second hunting, migrating, or looking after their young. The digestive and respiratory systems of every single one have functioned in perfection. Their bones, muscles, eyes, feet, and fins have all performed their tasks just as they should. For example, this fly has beaten its wings 500 times a second. While it is impossible for a human being to flap his arms 500 times a second, the trillions of flies on Earth have beaten their wings 500 times within the second that just passed by. Insects whose numbers reach extraordinary figures of 10 quintillion from 1.5 million species have remained alive through their countless features, such as their delicate insect antennae, the chemicals they use to communicate, the poisons they employ for offense and defense, and their hunting and camouflage tactics. It is Almighty and Omniscient Allah, He who is aware of all things, who keeps each one of these systems under His control simultaneously. While many living things in the animal kingdom continue their lives in a flawless manner, with their numbers more than the human mind could conceive. In every second that passes by, every photon coming from the sun has traveled 300,000 kilometers, and thus colors have formed. Every second, 16 million tons of water have fallen to Earth as rain. The Sun, which is one of the 250 billion stars in the Milky Way, which itself is one of 300 billion galaxies in the universe, has converted 564 million tons of hydrogen into 560 million tons of helium, and thus provided light and heat for the Earth. Are you at all aware of these events taking place inside and around you at every moment? Do you know how many leaves there are on all the trees on Earth? Or how many atoms there are on every leaf? Have you ever wondered how many grains of sand there are on and in the world? Or what the number of raindrops is? Do you know how many billions of types of animals and plants there are in the world? Or can you know how many people have lived ever since the time of the Prophet Adam, peace be upon him? How many are living now, or how many will live up until the day of reckoning? Is it at all possible for you to know the number of cells in their bodies, or how many proteins are produced in those cells? But our Almighty Lord knows all these things we've just counted, and He knows how many planets and asteroids there are in the vastness of outer space, how many stars there are, and how many electrons revolve around the nuclei of their atoms. Each one of these acts occur by the leave of Allah, Lord of the worlds. Allah is omniscient and He knows all things. I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed Satan. Do you not know that Allah knows everything in the heaven and earth? That is in a book. That is easy for Allah. The glorious numbers and details in the human body. Apart from blood and reproductive cells, all the cells in the body manufacture some 2,000 proteins a second. This process takes place in every single one of all the 100 trillion cells of all the 7 billion people living today. The 100 trillion cells in an adult person's body produce protein chains that flawlessly organize some 150 quintillion amino acids every hour. Note this. In order to produce protein chains, every single one of the 100 trillion cells in the bodies of 7 billion people organize 150 quintillion amino acids, a number that the human mind would fail to grasp every hour. During every cell division, DNA, a library that consists of 3 billion letters, 1 million pages, and 1,000 volumes is copied. This wondrous process of division takes place with the same perfection in the 100 trillion cells of each and every single one of the 7 billion people living in the world. A ribosome can add 20 amino acids to a protein chain every second. Wide-ranging protein synthesis thus takes place uninterruptedly every second in every single one of the 100 trillion cells of all the people in the world. There are some 10 billion nerve cells in the brain, and communication between them is established by means of 100 trillion synapses. 4 billion information exchanges take place every second between the two hemispheres of the brain. The brain deals with 750 million signals coming from inside and outside the body. A single brain cell can transmit more than 200,000 pieces of information at the same time. Do you realize that all these processes take place every second in every single one of the 10 billion brain cells in every single one of the 7 billion people on Earth? The white blood cells in the veins subject 10 billion cells in the body to health checks every 2 seconds. This checkup has taken place in all the people who have ever lived, and is taking place in the 7 billion people currently living today. With every breath taken, more than 300 million air sacs in the lungs open and close to admit air into the body. These cells and sacs carry out the same tasks, without exception, in the bodies of all the 7 billion people that breathe in every 3 seconds. The magnificent numbers and details in nature. The heart of the hummingbird, a tiny bird, which has far better hearing than the human beings and can see ultraviolet rays, beats 300 to 1,200 times a minute, and the hearts of all the hummingbirds on Earth beat 300 up to 1,200 times every single minute. 40,000 bees have to visit 6 million flowers to make 1 kilo of honey. The fastest computers in the world can perform 16 billion arithmetic processes a second. Yet the honeybee can perform 10 trillion processes in the same time, while expending less energy. Bacteria provides the oxygen we breathe. Cyanobacteria, algae, and other microorganisms in the sea give off some 150 billion kilograms of oxygen into the air every year. A tiny ant has some 500,000 nerve cells. Thanks to this extraordinary system, ants are able to use very different forms of communication. They are able to perform many activities, such as hunting prey, following one another, building nests, and fighting enemies thanks to this special nervous system. More snowflakes than can ever be calculated fall from the skies every year, and each one is different than all the others. Allah has created systems that the human mind cannot fully comprehend, the details of which have still not been discovered. Billions of details have been combined together and provided for people in the finest and most beautiful way. Man can only live by means of his DNA being copied every moment, the breath he takes in, the oxygen he inhales with every breath he takes, his heart that beats every single moment, the earth that constantly revolves, the food cycle, the water cycle, the nitrogen cycle, all the constantly moving atoms and countless other details. This is without doubt a very simple matter for Almighty Allah, who creates from nothing, who ordains all things as He wishes, and who is mighty enough to create them as He wishes at any time. I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed Satan. The keys of the unseen are in His possession. No one knows them but Him. He knows everything in the land and sea. No leaf falls without His knowing it. There is no seed in the darkness of the earth, and nothing moist or dry which is not in a clear book. What do people who realize these miracles going on at every moment must do is to reflect on the greatness of Allah, Lord of the worlds, and give thanks to Him for every blessing and every beauty. Because, as we have been informed in the Quran, every person will be called to account for the blessings bestowed on him when the day of reckoning comes. I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed Satan. He has given you everything you have asked Him for. If you try to number Allah's blessings, you can never count them. Man is indeed wrongdoing, ungrateful,